So it's 3 minutes past now, so I think we'll probably make a start. If I could introduce myself first, I'm Dr. Helen Beaumont. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Homeopathy. We promote and support the highest standards of practice, education and research in homeopathy. I would encourage you afterwards, if you have the opportunity, just to have a quick look at our website and see what we're doing in terms of education, and remind everybody of the value of our very well established peer-reviewed journal, Homeopathy. I would really like to take this opportunity to thank both Andrew and Vithoulkas Compass for the opportunity today to demonstrate Vithoulkas Compass homeopathy software. I'm sure perhaps to many of you, Andrew probably won't need much of an introduction. I've known Andrew for many years and he's been a brilliant ambassador and homeopathic practitioner for about 28 years now. For 14 years, he was working in the NHS, something that is very, very close to my heart. And I think it's such a shame that we are in this situation now where we have lost homeopathy within general practice. Andrew did 14 sterling years there with some excellent research coming out showing how homeopathy can be used in a GP setting. Following on from that, as well as being a very good homeopath, Andrew is a great educator, and he started off attending the seminars that George Vithoulkas ran in 1994. I think I went to my first Vithoulkas seminar in 1997, and Alonissos is such a beautiful place and such a wonderful setting to learn. He also runs a diploma in the International Academy of Classical Homeopathy, but that's not why we're here today. We're here primarily to look at Vithoulkas Compass, and Andrew is the UK ambassador for Vithoulkas Compass, the online repertory programme. So without any further ado, Andrew, welcome, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you very much, Helen. Welcome everyone. Can everyone hear me? I hope so. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to the faculty and Vithoulkas Compass for this chance to show some of the brilliant features of this program that has been very important to me for many years. I've been using this software from the early days of training with Professor Vithoulkas. I've been going to Alonissos now for 25 years. And in the early days of what was called the expert system with what was called VES, Vithoulkas Expert System, which was then the early days of this, and then Vithoulkas Compass has morphed out of this into a whole new program, and more importantly, repertory. Actually, the basis on which the program functions is a new repertory. The idea is to be a confirmed repertory, as a lot of repertories becoming too big with too much information that wasn't confirmed. So the idea is that we get much more accurate information for our cases. And also it's a very brilliant brain, if you like. It's like having Professor Vithoulkas's brain with you, helping you in your cases. And I hope to show you some of that we're going to be running a series of webinars through the year, and using some of my cases from my practice. I hope I'll be able to show you different features of the program. But I would say it helps me tremendously in my practice, and it helps us to, of course, I remember 30 years ago when we didn't have computers. There were no laptops or anything like that. We had to use books. And, you know, this is something that's not in everyone's memory now, because everyone's so used to using these devices now, which are, I think computers are almost God sent for homeopaths, because the way that a computer crunches information and data, all the data that we have and the format that it can put in it is perfect for our use. A very positive and creative use of a computer to put all that data that is in all these hundreds of books and to get it in one place, so that when we can search for things and we can compare things, which would take days and days in a book, and find things in the repertory that we didn't even know were there. So I hope to show you this. Yes, I will start with this case. I better share my screen. Let me see. Where is it? Hang on, I don't know if I've got it open. Let me see. Yes, I should be able to share this. Inbox, it's not that. Huh. Doesn't seem to be showing up on my screen. Sorry about this. We need to try and find this.
You co-host, Andrew. If you go down to the bottom and click on, have you got a green that says share screen on the bottom line? Go down, right down to the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I got. Oh, here we go. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, it wasn't showing up on the windows. You see.
No, no, it doesn't sometimes. Yeah.
Now it is. So, okay.
Excellent.
There we go. Yes. I'll put this here. Okay. What I'll do is I'll run through this case as if we're going through it, rather than having already done it. So just to show you how the program works. If I just put in here case 1. And then this is a case actually of ulcerative colitis and proctitis. This is the official diagnosis. So we'll put in here. Oh, why is that happening? So you can just type in and it will bring up some pathologies here that you can automatically add. You just have to fill in this very short thing at the beginning to open a case. Gender, age 29. We can just put the visit for today. And you have another box referred by. This is something that's useful because you can search on this to see who's referring patients to you, for instance, at a later date. So we create the case. You come to this window. Up here you have the information on the patient, ulcerative male, and here you can actually review the data and edit it if you want to. And then you say a new consultation, which takes you to the consultation window, and then add symptoms. So it's a very simple thing where we can start adding symptoms into our list in our repertorization. I mean, obviously, all repertories are useful for us and essential for us to confirm our case taking and our choice of remedy. Obviously, materia medica knowledge is paramount, but repertories are very important to help us differentiate remedies. This case, this young man came to see me 3 or 4 months ago now. I think 4 months with this diagnosis. Ulcerative colitis, as I'm sure most of you know, is classified as an inflammatory bowel disease affecting the large bowel or colon with ulceration. Causes unknown. Common symptoms include frequent painful urging for stool, diarrhea, mucus, bleeding, weight loss, all sorts of other general symptoms. And proctitis is similar condition, but it's really pertaining to the last section of the bowel and the rectum. The conventional treatment is usually anti-inflammatories, steroids and immunosuppressants are the standard treatments. So yes, he came to see me on the 12th of December. And just to give you a bit of the history, in 2015, he developed a gastroenteritis traveling in Mexico. So it was a very severe one, and he was treated there with various unknown antibiotics, which didn't seem to help very much. So he came back to the UK and had this severe diarrhea treated again with different types of antibiotic, which eventually stopped it. It was shortly after this that the condition started. So he started to then get bleeding from the rectum, and urgency, frequency, having to go many times a day, tremendous pain with urging. So he was treated with various anti-inflammatories, intravenous cortisone, hospital visits, as well as being put on cyclosporin, intravenously and tablets, which is an immunosuppressant drug. Actually created, I was looking at it, it's a drug that was created from a fungus in 1971. So they call it a natural drug. It's from a fungus called Polypocladium inflatum. It's a type of fungus that this cyclosporin was developed from. Anyway, and 9 milligrams daily of budesonide, which is a slow-release steroid. So he was on a lot of drugs and really not controlling it very well. You would have these visits going back into hospital and remissions, and then it would all start again. In my research, I noticed it said in 2017 in the United States, over 1 million prescriptions for cyclosporin were written. 1 million, 2017. So it shows you what a big problem these conditions are. Also, mebeverine was given for painful cramps and gas that he was getting, which is a sort of relaxant of the bowel. Fever history, I'll explain a bit about that. That's something to do with Professor Vithoulkas' levels of health, and which some of you may know about. And it's important to know where the patient has had high fever or acute illnesses or not, and how much possibility they have of their prognosis for cure. He very rarely had high fever that he remembers. Even when he had the enteritis in Mexico, he doesn't remember having a fever, particularly with it. So it seems his immune system's quite compromised, which is what it means. And it's now developed this chronic disease, which means he's unable to have acute inflammatory illnesses anymore. He's just got this permanent chronic disease, which is not improving. So his symptoms, fairly typical symptoms: bowel motions, very frequent, urgent and painful, stool with bleeding and mucus, a symptom of burning pains in the lower abdomen after stool, severe burning afterwards, and night sweats, severe night sweats, a bitter taste, gets hot very easily, and he's had a lot of weight loss, of course, with this condition, and then gets very low blood sugar, so needs to eat a lot of sugar, sweets, and very low energy. So he's a 29-year-old who's unable to really even do very much walking anymore. He struggles to even walk, you know, half a kilometer. Something, he's completely exhausted. He has no energy. He had a very physical job before. He was somebody that worked in those, how can you say, pylons, you know, up in the electricity pole, climbing up and fixing pylons and wind, those wind turbines and things. So very physical. General symptoms, strong desire, as I said, for sweets and sugar, very strong, and quite strong desire for eggs. And his energy had a particularly, he mentioned, he emphasized this, very low energy in the afternoon around 4 p.m, which would last a few hours. Then he would get a little bit better in the evening. So this was a key symptom. He likes fatty food, but he's worse from it. So he aggravates from it. Gets a lot of bloating and flatulence, but is much better if he can release the wind. He starts to feel relieved. He's a very thin person, as we said, tremendous weakness, very little appetite, and has a history of allergy to penicillin. I don't know if he was given penicillin, for instance, when he was in Mexico or somewhere, and he reacted to it, but he's quite allergic to it. Mental symptoms, not so much really. He has a bit of a fear of hospitals, and a bit of a fear of failure. Actually quite likes dangerous situations, or used to like doing dangerous things, like climbing. His job's very dangerous. He loves it. Heights are no problem for him. Although he likes to have a lot of routine and things planned these days. He's competitive, very thirsty, and has some anticipatory anxiety. So on a mental level, actually, he's quite stable, really. He doesn't have he's in a stable relationship. I would say his pathology is mainly on the physical level. It's not a condition that's based on the mental emotional level. It seems to have stemmed from a bowel infection, a gut infection that was perhaps suppressed with antibiotics, and then it's developed into a more chronic condition. So just to go through what I initially repertorized, so I can show you. I'll show you all my mistakes as well. I like to teach with showing you errors as well as successes. So we don't always get things right initially, but my first repertorization, I was looking, if some of you are familiar with the strategies of prescribing, particularly written about by Professor Vithoulkas in his strategies for prescribing. We have, he's classified certain strategies. The one that we hope to find in all patients is a totality. So this means where we have symptoms that are, we have symptoms on all levels, so mental, emotional, general symptoms and local symptoms that all fit one particular remedy. So we have a remedy that covers most of the symptoms in all those areas. This is the ideal for a case, to have a totality that covers the whole picture. Unfortunately, a lot these days we don't see this totality so easily as we used to. Even I remember 25, 30 years ago, cases were easier because they showed a much more clear picture. Now there's a lot more suppression. The picture is never, there's a lot more one-sidedness of cases, which means all the symptoms congregate in one level. So you get, for instance, mental health problems, but very little physical problems, or the opposite, very severe physical problems and very little on the mental level. So it's not a very well formed picture often now. So I went, as I always do, to try and get a totality in this case. So I took the only fear that he has. So we start typing in here, fear hospitals. He's got quite a strong fear of hospitals, which you might think maybe that's not strange if he's been in and out of hospital, but he had this before. So we can put this in. It's not a very strong fear. So what we do here, we have to underline the symptom. This is very important. It's not just adding the symptom. It's to give it some weight or some emphasis according to how strong or how spontaneous or how we feel the patient has said this information to us. So this gives some definition to our case. But here we have a very low-grade symptom. So we put it with 1, which is just an order. It corresponds a bit to the degrees in the repertory where you see, I won't show it so much here, but where you see ordinary entry and then one that's in italics is a slightly higher grade. And then you have 4 grades in the repertory. So it corresponds a little bit to that. So this one's gone in a low grade. The next symptom was, yes, he's also, I didn't mention, he's quite fastidious. So again, he likes everything to be in place in the house. And so this was a slightly higher grade symptom, 2nd degree. And then he had this symptom of abdominal pain. We just can type in the words after stool. Abdominal pain after stool. Okay, let's put after. Where is it? Abdomen pain after stool. Pain. So what we can do here is just go to abdominal pain. And then for another way to do this, scroll down to stool after. So this was the symptom. And this is a strong symptom. So we put it with 3 underlines. This is one of his strongest symptoms. He also had a tendency to diarrhea if he was anticipating something. So if he had something that was planned, he would start to feel and get diarrhea. So this is another symptom that, this is an interesting because it crosses between a physical and a mental symptom. You've got diarrhea, but also anticipation in the symptom. And then I used also rectum pain, pain, stool, after stool. That was at 2nd degree. And then rectum urging sudden. You would have a sudden urge. This is a strong symptom. The night sweats, we've got perspiration, profuse at night is the rubric for night sweats. This is strong. Also, I didn't mention, he said that they would stain the sheets. So here we go back to what you can do here in the repertory is you can go back with these arrows back and forwards, taking you back to the next level. So we want to get back to perspiration. Or you can click on perspiration and it'll take you to the start of that, and then all the sub-rubrics. So we can go perspiration, then we can look for staining the linen. So again, this is a strong symptom. No, not that one. Delete them there. Just staining the linen, that's it, that one. So here we see all our symptoms with our underlining. He had the general symptom, afternoon, four till 8. This was a very strong symptom, characteristic symptom for him. Worse 4 to 8 in the afternoon. And then some of his food things, we can just put in here, fat aggravates, it brings up the symptom. And desire for fat. Also, meat, he liked meat very much. Desire for meat. And sweets was the strongest one. So we put that with the 3 underlines, desire for sweets. And then I also put in lean. He's very thin. Of course, he's lost a lot of weight with his condition, but we could use emaciation, or which would be perhaps the symptom. So this was I've gone through that a bit quickly, but it's to show you we can use this program very quickly by searching for symptoms, by just typing anything we want. If he had a fear of dogs, we just type in fear dog, and it immediately brings it up, and we can see which symptoms appear. And from this level, this is just to show you, fear of dogs, for instance, you can say, I don't know much about this one, botulinum, and you can click on it. And it will bring up the Materia Medica of botulinum. So it's very useful, especially if we're using this program with the patient when we're talking, which is what it's designed for, is something as an interactive program, and you're not familiar. Whilst you're talking, you can bring this screen up and you can think, oh, botulinum, fear of cats and dogs and all the symptoms, and you can start to ask a few questions to confirm your can I get this out of the way? Oops. It's in the way now, this. Where do I move this screen? Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's just a small feature. You can access Materia Medica from this any point, or you can go up to Materia Medica and choose. Say if we wanted to look at gelsemium, it'll open gelsemium, and what you've got in Compass, which is a unique feature of Compass, is that you've got the keynotes and essences of Professor Vithoulkas. So this is a fantastic feature. No other program has this, which gives you the real essence of the remedies that you need to know. But you also have Burka, the full text, Kent, the master, Alan, keynotes, and then an acute thing that's been developed, which is a very nice acute picture of gelsemium, for instance, in influenza. And then some other features which I won't go into now, which are very useful, but another time. So back to the case. So this is what I used as a totality for him. But I'll show you actually what happened with that. So we solved this. And of course, what came up was lycopodium and sulfur, mainly. So I decided that with his 4 to 8 p.m. and aggravation and the desire for sweets, this was key for his case, and that he would need lycopodium. He had anticipatory fears, etc. So I gave him lycopodium and 30C, as he was on all these various drugs still, 30C daily, once a day. And we had a follow-up on the 11th of January, so 1 month later. And he said there was no change in so let's put this in here. When you've chosen a remedy, you click on it, it brings it down here. And you put the prescription details, save, accept. So then you've got your first prescription here. His follow-up, he said not much change, no change in the chief complaint, or he didn't notice any reaction. The only change, he reported, was that the 4 to 8 p.m. energy low had gone. So his energy was better in the afternoon, specific lycopodium symptom, but no change in the pathology or the physical symptoms. This also suggests we had no aggravation, which in his level, which is quite low, I would say he was probably in for those who know the levels of health group 3, you would expect an aggravation. So this suggests the remedy was incorrect, despite he had some slight improvement in a general symptom. Sometimes you might say, oh, the patient says, I feel better in my energy, you should wait. But in a condition like this, you can't wait because he's losing weight, he's losing blood all the time. It's not something that's after a month, you would expect there to be much more change. So this just suggests that it's possibly the wrong remedy or the wrong time for this remedy. So only one part of the case has been altered. This is quite in my experience, and we know, a serious pathology, and often they end up in hospital for long periods of time. So I decided at this point to change my strategy to what George describes, Professor Vithoulkas describes as essentials. Essentials is what we would call pathology-based prescription. So looking more at the specific pathology and saying, will we find a remedy that can address his physical pathology? So what we do here is we do new consultation at this point. So we've done, this is the symptoms you used before. So the idea is to see if anything of these have changed, or we add new symptoms in. So this time, I thought I would look at it in a different way. And abdominal pain after, so this one I kept, the pain after stool was still there. Diarrhea after anticipation, still there. This time I just put them all as one. More specifically, he said that this pain in the rectum was burning pain after stool. So that's this symptom. Move this out the way again. Burning pain after stool. This one. So that's now added. Urging, frequent urging. We didn't have, so that's another one. Frequent urging in rectum, which is one of his strongest symptoms. The stool symptoms that I hadn't included before. Mucus, slimy and bloody, which is actually his main symptom with the urging. Perspiration at night. And the food things I kept the same. Desire for fat, desire for meat, all these, but the same. Desire for sweets. It was a bit less, he said. So see, the lycopodium had some effect on the energy. It brought the sweets down a little bit, but didn't address the pathology. Unlean person. So this was the new, I said, no real effect. So the new repertorization has 11. I've got 12 here, hang on. Missed out one. Oh, hemorrhage, that's right. So I put in the bleeding. Hemorrhage during stool. Okay. Has that gone in? No. Okay. Here, the options we can sort you can sort your symptoms if you like them in various orders by chapter, for instance. So that will bring in the classic chapter from mind down to generals. You can sort them by degree, which shows you bring up the highest degrees first down to the lowest. Various ways you can do it. I quite like to have the chapters. And now this repertorization brought up an interesting remedy which I've used before. And my experience with ulcerative colitis is successful experience has been mainly with Mercury remedies, which of course cover a lot of the pathology of this condition. And specifically, Mercsol and Mercurius Corrosivus. And it's interesting, this program's brought this remedy up, even though we've kept a lot of the symptoms from before and added a few more of the pathology-based symptoms. And here we can see which symptoms belong to that remedy. And you see in red the key symptoms of his pathology. frequent urging, which you see here matches in terms of intensity, and the bleeding, the burning after stool, which one is the original symptoms, and the bleeding again, pain and aggravation from fat, and all this stuff it doesn't cover. So, and you have here down here Merc Sol, which also has the same symptoms. They're very similar remedies, and but it's interesting that Compass will bring up, due to the emphasis that you've put in and the matching of the symptoms, it's brought Corrosivus up higher than Solubus. And it says here, you can see some data, which is that the case is highly dependent on those two symptoms. There's some metadata. Metadata is some interesting little bits of information coming mainly from some classic authors and Professor Vithoulkas, that shows some differentials between remedies from a practical point of view. And you see here some information from the master of Materia Medica, Farrington, differentiating between Colosynthesis and Nux vomica. And here to do with desire for fat and the remedies that have that, fat and sweets. So Mercurius Corrosivus was the next choice because he needed some relief from these symptoms. And I've used it before. So I put him onto Mercurius Corrosivus 6C 3 times a day. And that was on the 23rd of December. Not December. What was that? 27th. No, it can't have been. The follow-up was the 11th of January. So it was in January. And when in his next follow-up, he'd stopped the cyclosporine because he didn't feel that it was helping him anyway, very much. So he stopped it. And gradually started stopping the other drugs. And on the 27th of the month, he had an improvement in his symptoms, less urgency, frequency, and bleeding. And he started a skin eruption. And whenever we hear this, we have to jump for joy, because when the inflammation has come from an internal part out onto the skin, we know we're on the right track. It's the indication that the pathology is shifting in the direction of cure. So I'm sure you're all familiar with direction of cure, from inside out, from less important organs to more important organs to less important organs. And we have to see this to be sure of our curative action of a remedy, to see this direction of cure. So a very red, itchy eruption on his legs and arms. By the 30th, he had more appetite, less pain, less bleeding, skin worse. By the 3rd of the next month, massive reduction in the bleeding, feeling better in general. By the 9th, much more energy, improved appetite, much less frequency, only a small amount of bleeding. And on the 16th, he stopped the remedy for 5 days. Can sleep through the night now. The night sweats have gone. 4 times stool a day, but it's formed now, no bleeding. Energy's improved tremendously. By the 18th, his skin was worse, bleeding a little bit. Starts the mercury again on the 20th, as he had some slight worsening of the symptoms. By the 25th, improved again. And at this point, and by the end of the month, he started to develop a new symptom. And this is what we like to see. We like to follow the evidence, if you like, in the case. We don't project into the case, we follow what's happening. He's had a tremendous improvement. He's had a direction of cure. It's coming onto the skin, and now we have a new symptom. So let's put in here what we did, Mercurius Corrosivus 6C. So that was the next thing. And this was the next follow-up. So we see a symptom. He said a lot of flatus, wind in the evening, which is a new symptom. So we can put this in our new repertorization. Flatus in the evening. It's a strong symptom. It says he has it every evening. This symptom is still there sometimes. Diarrhea, anticipation. Pain, tenesmus before stool. So he's getting still some urging, particularly in the morning. This is a newish symptom as well. Urging, sudden urging in the morning. A strong symptom. It's another new symptom. Also, he says that it's very offensive. It's all very offensive. He has a desire for eggs. The other symptoms are the same. Fat aggravates, desire for fat, desire for meat. Clean. Doesn't have the sweats anymore. He's getting very warm. He was always warm, but he's aggravating with heat. We see here as a general symptom. And so we've seen a large improvement. No initial aggravation. So this is the new repertorization with the added new symptoms. Also, there was one other thing which clinched this, as we would all know this symptom. He had not much appetite. He was beginning to get much better appetite, but particularly at 11 a.m. Mid-morning, he said he would get hungry. He wasn't hungry at breakfast. He wanted to eat mid-morning. So we have here this nice symptom. Where we can now see a beautiful picture of sulfur emerging in his case. So he has a tremendous improvement, but now a new picture developing of sulfur, which in the original, if you remember the original repertorizations, was coming up. If sulfur would have done something at that point, I doubt it, because it wasn't fully formed. You see, he didn't have the hunger at 11 a.m., didn't have the wind in the evening. You see this symptom, wind in the evening, sulfur. Third degree, this is symptoms we like. And these came up after the Mercurius Corrosivus layer, which he needed this remedy first. He's come off at this point all the drugs. He's not taking anything. And the condition is very manageable. No bleeding now. He just has these new symptoms. and a nice sulfur picture, which covers virtually everything. Interestingly, we know sulfur doesn't like eggs. So what this indicates to us is that the next layer will be Calcaria, which we know follows sulfur very nicely in our remedy relationships. So ultimately, he may go back to calcium carbonate, which was probably his original remedy. But we don't know. We can only know that if a clear picture of calc comes up later. So sulfur was the next remedy, which I gave him a 200C single dose at this point. So it's a very clear picture. And then the report I had on the end of February, feeling much better in self, more energy, can go for long walks now, appetite good, urgency much, much less in the mornings, no bleeding now for weeks. Again, 7th of March, no bleeding, much better. 11th of March, no symptoms, all drugs stopped. And then I spoke with him again this week. Everything's going well. So no drugs, symptoms are good. He's regaining his energy, his appetite. So it's taken 3 months to get from this position. And I believe that the lycopodium did very little as a starting remedy, but he needed Mercurius Corrosivus for the pathology and then Sulphur to finish, and he may need calcium next, maybe. So that's the case. I think it's very nice to see that kind of pathology resolve in such a short time. We'll still give him some more time, another 6 months, to see how things are going. He's doing well. He's on the road to recovery. We just need to see him get a fever now, some kind of acute with a fever, to know that he's really out of danger. Because it would be very easy for someone like him to fall back into his pathology if he's not careful. What are we doing for time? Yes, as a level of health discussion, I wanted to just mention that according to Professor Vithoulkas's levels of health, as I said before, in the upper groups of health, we are protected, if you like, from the appearance of chronic disease developing, as we have the ability still to, our defense mechanism, to produce acute inflammatory illnesses with high fever. This ability directly correlates with the road to chronic health problems, so that the inability to have high fever, that is. A lack of history of high fever usually indicates a chronic level of health or the preparation for a chronic disease to appear. Now, in this case, on inquiry, he doesn't remember ever having a high fever with influenza, for instance. But he did say he never bothers to take it if he is ill. So maybe he has had a temperature but never bothered. He had one high fever with a vaccine a few years ago, he remembers. Apart from this, he didn't even have one with the acute infection in Mexico. So it shows that his system was compromised, and it was very easy for him to fall into this chronic state once he had this infection, and then it was suppressed with antibiotics. Of course, allopathically, they just said it just started. There was no explanation for this pathology. We know that it was related to this acute that he developed. And this had been plaguing him now for 6 years. 6 years of suffering like this in a young man. It's ruined his life, really. He has no life. So now we can make such a big change for somebody so quickly with the correct prescribing. his aggravation actually appeared on the skin, which, as I said before, is a beautiful place to see the aggravation. It's where we want to see things come onto the skin. And by the way, his skin problem has since disappeared. So it came onto the skin, got very bad. He didn't treat it. Thankfully, I told him not to treat it. And then the condition has gone. So it came out through the skin. So we see here a beautiful reaction with direction of cure, bringing the inflammation to the surface. The internal condition is then relieved. That is our aim, as Hahnemann says, to restore health rapidly, gently, permanently, to remove and destroy the whole disease in the shortest, surest, least harmful way, according to clearly comprehensible principles. And this is what the simplicity of homeopathy is. If we follow the principles, we can attain these results. Remedy differential. I'll just show you something on here. We need to go back to one of these screens just to show you. If you're not familiar with Mercury Corrosivus, there's a neat little thing that I use quite a lot on Compass that I think is brilliant. You can do some differentials. So you select the remedy here. You just start typing and it'll bring it out. So you see, okay, Mercury, and then you type another one, Corrosivus. So you've got both remedies in there. And what you can do is you can have a look at the differences between them, a differential. So for instance, let's narrow it down to rectum symptoms. So you choose the chapter here. If you don't choose it, it'll extract all the symptoms of both remedies. But let's pin it down to rectum symptoms. You can even put in your own one particular symptom here if you like to really narrow it down. Also, you can narrow it down to rubric size and degrees, but we'll keep it like this and I'll explain this. So we do a search. What this will do, you've got three options here: differentiate, exclude, and common. So here you've got Mercury in this column and Mercury Corrosivus, and it's showing you the symptoms one remedy has and the other one doesn't have. And this is a great tool for us for learning. Because these remedies are very similar. What's the difference? And we see here some of the differences and some of the common symptoms. So we can here, if we click on that, you'll see that they share a lot of common symptoms, even in high degree. So here you've got both remedies, for instance, have this urging after stool, frequent urging, tenesmus after stool, all these dysentery and inflammatory bowel condition symptoms, hemorrhage, etc. And then you can exclude one. It shows you all the symptoms that one remedy the other doesn't have, and then you can swap it around. Well, the differentiate's very useful to say, well, look, they share these and these, but not these. So this is very useful if you're trying to decide, why did you give Mercury Corrosivus and not Mercury? Which is a good question. Somebody may have asked it already, but this kind of feature is very useful. And I can show you something else, for instance. You can look at Mercury. What you can do, this is a very, very useful tool for learning Materia Medica and looking at the essence of a remedy. So what you can do is you can, let's do something else, another remedy. Let's look Rostox, for instance. Rostox. And let's go for, you put in here maximum rubric size 1. This means that these are going to only select rubrics where it's the only remedy in a rubric, so it's unique. And here you see all these symptoms. Ras tox is the unique remedy. For instance, chills. And also you can select degrees. You can deselect and say, okay, let's try it's going to work. Yeah. So here's a very good example. What this is doing is it's selecting symptoms where you see we've selected only 3rd and 4th degree symptoms of Ras tox. So it brings up almost like an essence of Ras tox. So you see here, the 4th degree, these are the key strong symptoms of Ras tox. Cold, wet weather, they're affected in all ways, mentally, emotionally, and physically, with cold, wet weather. So you see in 4th degree, there it is. Stretching, Ras tox is always doing this, you know. Stretching, stretching, stretching. Stiffness, desire for milk, hugely strong desire. They will drink liters of it. Restlessness. So you see, in a nutshell, you have the remedy. So it's a very good way to study the remedy and to show its essence. You see here all the symptoms relate to weather, foggy weather, cloudy weather, wet weather, etc. So that's just another little great feature in Compass. Okay.
Andrew, there has been a lot of questions have been answered as we've been going along because they've been about the program itself. But I think it might be helpful if you could perhaps just explain the health levels a little more. There've been a couple of questions asking about that.
Okay, so yes, I haven't had a look at the chat yet.
Some of them have come to me and some of them are general. So that's the main one I've picked out. I think all the others to date, other than saying thank you so much and how much that people have enjoyed it, the one that hasn't been answered is about health levels.
Levels of health. Well, it's not very easy to explain it in a nutshell, really, in a short time. I guess yes. What I can say is what I was saying earlier, that what you can do, actually, everybody can see. Can you see this, or they can't see it because of my screen? Okay, maybe not. The levels of health is his book that explains. So if everybody wants to really look in depth at it, it's called The Levels of Health. It's the 2nd volume for the Science of Homeopathy by George Vithoulkas. So that's the one you need to get to read. But in a nutshell, he's presented this model of 12 levels of health. So 4 groups of 3 levels. And basically the upper groups have the simplest way to look at it is in terms of where somebody is the cutoff point is between level 6 and 7, which is where patients either have the ability to have acute inflammatory illness with high fever in level 6, or in level 7 they don't have that anymore. They've lost that ability. So in both of those groups, so levels 1 to 6, have the ability to get high fever, and in the 7 to 12 they don't. And then in those lower groups, this is where chronic disease and chronic degenerative disease and incurable disease starts to develop. So the idea is for all of us and for our patients to keep in the upper levels of health. What brings us down into lower levels of health is suppression. So bringing things down gradually, losing that ability to have fever. There are various things talked about that they're able to do that, but basically not allowing fevers to be there and to be treated in an appropriate way. So people's immune systems get compromised and finally give up. And you'll see this in your cases, in your chronic cases, that the more you ask these questions, you'll find that the majority of those patients will have lost that ability to have high fever many years ago, and have developed, their rheumatoid arthritis or their, Meniere's disease or whatever it is. And the proof of this theory, this model actually, is that when we treat people and we bring them back to health, their ability for fever comes back and their chronic disease disappears. And then they get the fevers again. And this is the proof of the model. So this is what we're looking to achieve, really. I guess that's in a nutshell. I mean, it's a big subject, and in the course, in his course, there's probably about 100 hours taught on the levels of health. So it's only limited what we can do here.
Yeah, and just I think this may be probably for another day, but someone's asking if we could see a little more about the synapse and the all C and C plus functions.
Yeah, I'll do them another time.
I think yes. And
yeah.
Andrew, do you use flat repertorization?
I don't know.
No,
never. I think it's I've grown up with this way of doing things that I was taught by Professor Vithoulkas, and I used to, in the early days, I used to do the old, before computers, the flat representation. You'd add up the scores of the symptoms. It was so laborious. Mm-hmm. But now we're looking to try and find the characteristics. I suppose the key thing, understanding of case taking is taking on Hahnemann's precious words about who knows what rubric number it is. The strange, rare, and peculiar. Mm. Which one is that? Can't remember now. But anyway, where he says, almost always we need to take notice of the strange, rare, and peculiar characteristic symptoms in a case. Forget about the common symptoms. We need to look at what's really presenting in a very strong, characteristic or peculiar way. And this is really the way to look at things, and to find really the simillimum. So this program helps that a lot, as we see, with these the way this is structured. It can bring up, as we saw with the this one, it brought Mercurius Corrosivus up strongest, despite the fact that it didn't have as many symptoms as many of the other remedies. But because of you see here, this is what it's about. It's the matching. You see, this is exact. Every symptom in the case matches the degree in their repertory. So it's like a perfect match. And that's what the rules that this program is based on, is on the various rules of Hahnemann and of classical homeopathy to bring up the real simillimum, and even here we have a small remedy. Who knows what cornus is? But it's brought it up because of these two symptoms, and this may be the remedy. You see, and that won't come up if you do a flat repertorization.
Won't be there.
Look, Mercury Corrosivus not even there, is it? Oh, it's there. It's about 15th. You see, and see sulfur comes up, but sulfur is what you needed next. So this program is very different, and cornus would never come up, you see, and then you can say, oh, what's cornus? And we see that it's dogwood, and it has a lot of some bowel symptoms and skin symptoms, and we can do a search on that remedy, for instance, and maybe this is even closer, So I think this is the real benefit of this program.
There's another question about how would you use differential analysis?
Differential, yes, I can show that if I can get this. Okay. Differential, yes. So if we wanted to go even on this screen, if we differential, so you've got these results coming up, and you click differential, and what it will come up is with some set questions that relate to these top remedies, so that you can have a differential. So you can start asking the patient, if you're not sure, you can be looking and saying, oh, yes. Are they industrious constipation? Do they like spices? So these are remedies relating to certain of these remedies that you might want to add in. So they might say, yes, I'm very, I get very, very irritable. So you can then, add that in to the case. Also, so you've got that differential, but also down here, you've got main keynote symptoms. This is also useful. So you can say, well, I don't know Mercurius Corrosivus very well. So you click on this. And this gives you some Mercurius Corrosivus questions that you can ask. You may not know to ask them. You say, oh, is the pain, do you get pain that's burning? And they say, oh, yes. And is the urine hot? And they say, yes. So you can add in things you may not have known. Discharges, burning, bladder. One of the things about Mercurius Corrosivus is that one of the differentials with Mercury is that Mercury doesn't have so much, is that they have a combination of tenesmus, so that's painful urging of the bladder and rectum together, as Mercury tends to have them separately. In Corrosivus, it comes together. You get both that are aggravating. So that's useful. And then there's a case-specific differential, which gives some very specific symptoms based on the symptoms you've put in to try and define it a bit more. So you see mostly it's symptoms to do with the bowel and the rectum. And you can say, is it burning during the stool? And they say, no. And do you get urging during urination? And they say, oh, yes, I have that. And you see, that's a particular remedy of symptom of nux, for instance. Or do you have, is the perspiration only at night? Is it day and night? Which is a Mercury symptom. And so on. So all these things that are there to help you define. And then you've got another one, which is small remedies symptoms, which is trying to look at some of the small remedies, which here I can show you. Here we're using the main results. You can go to large, which is focusing on the polycrests, which is not much difference. All that does, it takes out the small remedies. And then you can go to small remedies, which takes out all the main remedies. So here it's showing you, think about corners, think about gambogia, because it has all, you know, some symptoms that are very specific. So these are useful tools for trying to define your case a bit more. Yeah.
I think there's just perhaps time for one more question. And people say, which is the repertory based on? Is it Kent, complete, question mark?
Yeah, I think the repertory, I'm not an expert, I think, on the specifics of it, but they're based on Kent's repertory, and then it was developed with the experience editions of Professor Vithoulkas and some of the Kent and the masters.
Yeah,
we consider the classic masters, you know. So and plus, it's a system that's being constantly confirmed. You see, so it's a living program. So
yeah.
things are always being looked at. Are symptoms ever being used? Are people reporting this symptom being used a lot? And if a symptom is being confirmed, then it can be added into the repertory. Yeah.
Excellent. Andrew, I think that was fantastic. It really gave us a very clear insight. And I think teaching with cases, for me, always brings things alive and makes it much more real. So thank you for that, because it demonstrates both the system itself, but also something that's dynamic and really true to life. And you can see how the case management evolved, as well as just, you know, the repertory or, you know, one remedy. So thank you very much for that. I'd also really like to thank everybody for coming. It's lovely to see so many people and so many faces, some that I know, some that I don't know, and it would be lovely to be able to meet you all soon. There's a little bit more information there Elena's put up about Vithoulkas Compass, and you can find out more about it. Faculty of the homeopathy members can get 25% discount. So if there was ever a good time to join the faculty, it's now. There are different forms of members, so you can almost be a friend or an associate. So please do have a look and find out a bit more about us. And as I say, do watch this space for details about further seminars. And a big thank you, Andrew, and a big thank you to Vithoulkas Compass.
Thank you very much.